know when we're live. We're live. All right. So it is live PMP Success Stories with Scott. Today, the podcast, we have a special guest. Afterwards, we're going to go through some hard questions. Just me walking through with you guys out there. But before we get into this, it's always cool to hear a story of someone who went through and did really well on the new exam. So, sir, would you introduce this way? I got to go this way. Would you introduce yourself and tell us what you just accomplished?
Oh, it's quite some time. I've been hearing all the noise about COVID, somebody infected, all bad news and all. So after a long time, I myself made an achievement. I feel after all this crisis, made getting a certification. Good news has started flowing in. The same day when I secured the PMP, I secured a couple of federal government contracts.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like the season started, and
That's
this
awesome.
achievement, the PMP, is a boosting for me. I know
that's really great. I know you've been working on it for a long time. Give us a little bit about your exam journey. Like, what did you do to start out? Like, what was it like when you started out?
Oh, I started going as an academic, explored all the PMBOK 6, collected huge bunch. The chest over there is full of with all the PMP materials.
Yeah.
So I am deeply into all, but could not find any clue where to start or pull the thread. Tried experimenting for a couple of two attempts earlier, but I could not make it. The very first session with I think even in the intro with you helped me where to hold the string, and there I started, and we are here today.
That's awesome. That's amazing, man. So I know you're always on the coaching calls, you do all those things. Like as you went through, you put in tons of work, and you were involved in the calls, and you went through the course and all these different things to prepare you for the exam. What was the best thing about the studying? Like, what resonated with you? What helped you the most? If you told, it might help somebody else. So what helped you the most, man?
Oh, the one thing is the accelerator that really accelerated the way how am I reading, the frequency, the timeline. Somebody, when I see my calendar showing up, Thursday is popping, that's urging me. Okay, I need to show my face to Rob with no. There are a couple of days when there is no show on my end, and I have to see Rob. I know I'm not prepared how to answer.
Yeah.
Say that all no, the frequency, basically the accelerator helped me in
That's great.
coming up to a pace and attempting reading the question. The train, it's a kind of it's a holistic approach. It's a holy and holistic.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. That's cool. And so what did you like most about the Rob calls, the accountability calls? Like you said, the pace was always there. Was it nice having someone there to support you? What was helpful?
Yeah, I mean, he shared me a brilliant piece of workbook, which shows me how am I progressing, where am I standing last week, or the tests, how am I taking. That created a lot of interest. I did open a couple of other workbooks which he shared, and compared my scores. That's a kind of group kind of sessions. Like I see my other trainees worksheets, see how they are progressing. That kept me a kind of competitive spirit there. Okay, man, this guy Edward, he's doing better than me. Okay, I need to push on my do little more. So
that's great. That is great.
That's one thing I liked very much, and
that's good.
I was super excited about that. That in fact, to tell you, Scott, a kind of discipline for the last 5-6 weeks that helped me. I can change. I can see it's a right turn which I took when onboarded with this Accelerator program, and obviously the accountability coaching calls gave that kind of finishing to all my efforts earlier. But the previous efforts, if I would have continued that, I'm sure this is another example that successfully I would have failed for another time.
Okay. So if you went down and you thought about, like, there's a lot of people out there struggling and just haven't found the best way, like, what would be your advice for those students? Like, what would you recommend they do to be able to finally get to the point like you, or they could do really well?
Oh, just no, don't waste time. Scott is here. That's all.
That's cool. Well, that is great. Well, this won't be the last time we talk. I just wanted to bring you on, say congrats, and say you did so good. It was awesome having you in the calls. It's sad that you won't be there, but we know why, so it's all right. And if there's anything that we can do to help you out as you keep moving along, congratulations on the contracts. Please let us know. We really appreciate, and we're proud of how you did.
Sure. For my next plans, I'm definitely knocking your door, Scott.
All right.
What's that next I have to do? So help me out, and thank you very much. Please accept my thanks from my parents as well.
Yeah. I'll say hello to them. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I got to bounce back to the next thing, but thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Bye. All right. That is cool. So we're going to take that off. And today, as we bump into it, what I wanted to do in a little bit of time today, Sue's talking in the little chat. Some people are out there, but we're going to go through a couple things. So we launched these flashcards. If you haven't gotten them, go check them out. They're really awesome. They are, topping the charts at Amazon. They're really, really helping people nail down what's most important to the PMP. So go check them out. But today, for you guys, what I wanted to really, really do is I wanted to talk to you about like one key word that can help you out a ton, and that'll help you recognize the problems that you're having in your current study. All right. So a lot of people out there right now are having difficulties because they're trying to do too much. Okay. They have, I just mentioned the flashcards. They might have multiple flashcards. They got multiple books. They have boot camps. They got videos. They got podcasts. They got whatever. They got all these things out there, and their desk may look like a pile of documents, like a junk pile in a sense, a PMP junk pile. All right. And so really what they're doing is they're lacking focus. So if you want to make a big difference in your PMP study path now, it's all about focus. Now, it's not about doing everything. It's about doing the things that matter. And the number one thing that you got to do right now is recognize whether you have a problem. Okay. And the biggest problem that I see that students have is they're getting pulled this way and that way by their eagerness or desperation or hope that someone out there has a magic bullet. I don't think they do. And what you end up doing is you find all these different resources and you spread yourself thin trying to find a better way to do things. All right? And you'll spend a little time here looking through flashcards. Spend a little time here looking through a book. Spend a little time here diving into the PMBOK. Then go to a YouTube video. Then listen to this. Then do that. And then you read a blog. And what you're doing is lacking the focus. And you're essentially hoarding all the information. And if you've ever seen that show, Hoarders, on TV, it's a terrible situation. You walk into a house that got cats, dogs, rats, all hanging out in piles of papers and everything. You are essentially a PMP hoarder. The biggest thing you got to do is recognize it and recognize that you are standing in your own way. All right. Now, focus is where we need to go. All right. So if you recognize and literally just look at your desk, do you have multiple books? Do you have multiple tabs open on your desktop? Do you have different things that you jump to? Are you dipping your toe in a lot of little pools? You've got to stop. You've got to stop. In the Agile context, they call this context switching. All right? And what they're saying is, hey, we want our people allocated to one project, full on, all together, self-managing, self-organizing, moving through. If we start to say, man, this person's super smart, they can work over here, right here, right here, throw a little bit over here, you know what you get? Nothing. You spread their genius across multiple areas, and the actual productivity goes way down. So you're no different. You have to focus on one methodology, whether mine or someone else's. You got to ask yourself, how best do you learn? How best do I learn? You got to ask yourself. And what methodology provides that? And laser focus on that methodology. So the number one thing I could implore you to do right now, and the people watching, let's clear this up so that I can go clear on the screen. You got to ask yourself, am I spreading myself too thin? Am I putting around there? Am I a PMP hoarder? Now, if you are, it's going to be okay, but you got to stop it. So if you're spending a lot of time, that's what we can do today. So word of the day is focus. All right. So what we're going to do right now is you and I are going to solve questions together. All right. So when we say focus, it doesn't matter if we're talking about how we study, how we, go through material, how we look at stuff, or how we solve questions. Focus is what matters. Let me find out which way I got to go to point to the screen. I got to go that way. That's sweet. All right, cool. So we're going to solve a question together. All right. And I want you to follow the methodology. So every time you look at a problem, I want you to do this. Number one, I want you to imagine that the answers aren't there, because we got to kind of develop a solution in our own mind. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to read the last sentence. That's going to tell us where we're looking, ahead, behind, contextually, what matters. So read the last sentence. What metric would show that the problem was effectively addressed? Isn't that interesting the way they framed that? Okay, so what is that telling us? That's not what is not, what is, what kind of problem. It's saying what metric, so we're looking at a metric, would show that the problem was effectively addressed. So we're going to walk through a situation where we have a situation, bang, we did something. We know that there's sad news on this side. We've done something here. And then on the other side, it's got to be smiley face. So we've addressed it. But what metric on the board tells us that the problem's addressed? Isn't that exciting? We haven't even looked at the problem yet, but we know the scenario. Problem, bang, we made a solution. Boom, we got to figure out what the thing is right now. So now our brain's framed, okay? Now I'm going in depth and talking a lot to show you what goes on really quick with our students, because we're teaching them how to look at it. Now we know what to look for. Go back to the base of the question, bing, bang, and let's read it. Whew. Nice, easy for context. It says, after 3 agile iterations showed a trend of increasingly prolonged test work, the team performed an intensive backlog refinement. So let's break that down. What's happening here? So we're in Agile, right? How do we know that? It says it. 3 Agile iterations. So we might be in Scrum, right? In that. 3 Agile iterations. So those are moving along. So let's picture 1 iteration, 2 iterations, 3 iterations. We realize a trend. What does that mean? Increasingly bad, right? Things are getting worse. A trend of increasingly prolonged test work. What does that mean? We're throwing tons of work into our sprints, right? And on the back end or during it, there's a lot of test work. Why might that be? Well, we don't understand the work. We're not breaking it down. We're not collaborating. We don't have it organized well. Maybe. And then what did they do? What's at this point right here? We know we have a problem. Lots of test work. Not good. Probably not getting the work done. Not birthing the increments in a sense. What did we do? Backlog refinement. Intensive backlog refinement. I don't want to write all those words, right? So I'm going to say intensive backlog refinement. All right. So they're saying if we did that and things turned out to be good, look at that face, it's smiling. What metric would tell us that? Now, what I want you to do and what I want all students to do is ask yourself, what is backlog refinement? What change would it make to the process? Out there's people watching right now. Tell me in the chat, what happens during backlog refinement? Why do we do it? When you have these questions, what everybody wants to do is go down here at the answers. They think that's their bastion. That's where they can learn. No. Up here. So when we ask ourselves, backlog refinement, well, a backlog is a repository that stores all the user stories which are the things, the features, the functionalities that would deliver value to the customer. And they're formed in the backlog they're organized from highest value to lowest value. And as we think about this backlog, the user stories at the bottom are usually the biggest in a sense. They're broad, they're not well defined, and they're lower in value right now as far as importance to the customer. So if you think about the backlog, I want you to think about a pyramid, okay? And the ones at the bottom are bigger, right? Less well-defined, bigger, not broken down. But as they go up and get closer to being ready to work on and ready to bring it to the sprint, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And what does that mean? Like the card's the same size. I got stickies on my desk, but imagine this is a card. They're the same physical size, but the depth and the specificity in them, it's a smaller scope of work. It's better defined. Okay, and so that's what we're talking about here. As they get to the top, they're more and more defined. So backlog refinement takes things that go up and they start to break them down and work them up so that the things at the top are broken down just at the right size and criticality so that the team can go there, understand them, negotiate with the product owner, get a good understanding, estimate them, and work them through. One of the ways that I think about it in my head is that imagine that we had to go through a mountain. And that's a mountain that ran out of space. And there's just a little, driveway or hole in the mountain, like a path through the mountain. Big, ginormous cards can't get through the mountain. What we've got to do is break them down and understand which ones are the highest value. Organize those chunks. Imagine a big car carrier with all these fancy cars trying to get through this mountain. And there's a little hole that can just fit a little sports car as it goes through. We can't drive the big truck through. So what do? We got to break this truck down into its base components and really ask, do we want these cars to go through? Do we? And in what order? What would deliver the most value so that they can flow through? So see these things being refined and broken down and going through. Now, that's what they did. We haven't even looked at the answer, y'all. But we said they went through backlog refinement. So what does that mean? They took the backlog stories, and that could be a reason because they're too big and they're not well defined, they're not well estimated, they're not well understood. That could be a reason why we have a lot of test work. Tell me why. Well, the reason would be we haven't put them through the crucible enough to understand and break them apart. And there's a lot of ambiguity. There's big scope, so there's probably a lot of testing parts to it. If we break it down, there's less. We can incrementally test and build it up. So we've solved that problem. They have, right? By doing backlog refinement. We've got all these little chunks. Imagine this big card gets broken down to a bunch of little cards, right? And all those go to the backlog. So what's the backlog going to look like after we do this? Well, it's going to have more on it, right? Because we broke certain things down more. Down. So that's what we got in the backlog. More in there. So there's going to be more. If we were to measure the quantity of things in the backlog, that could be there. We would also say that things get through quicker, right? Because we're not putting big boulders through a process. We're putting little rocks through. That's awesome. And the little rocks are really golden, but each one of them smaller. So it's going to be nickels, bing, 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 shot out instead of dollar bills. But we're going to get more nickels out, or $5 bills instead of $100 bills. So that's the way it goes. So as we've talked through that, I'm just saying, like, in these questions, we have to visualize what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to steal the learning from ourselves. That's what I do every night with students. We walk through things in this way, okay? So as we go to number one, would the metric, if we did backlog refinement that shows that it had been effectively addressed, is it that we would have an increase in value per story? That means each user story would have a larger money sign attached to it. Now, let's think about that. Is that true? Ask yourself, what did we essentially do? We took the user story and we refined it. So a lot of them, we ripped it apart in a positive way and broke it down into 4 individual stories Maybe one of them didn't make it, drops down in value. The others were refined, and we understand them, and we estimate, and we put them through. So if all 4 of these were worth $1,000, and they broke them apart so that each part's worth about $250 or whatever, one went away. Now, instead of one big card worth $1,000, we have 3 cards worth $250-ish. That's cool. So if they say by breaking things down through intensive backlog refinement, we would have an increase in the value per story, that doesn't sound right. You know that's not right. What we have is a decrease potentially in the value per story. Now, the overall value for the product is going to get better delivered. That's awesome. But it's going to get delivered in little chunk, little chunk, little chunk. And that's what we want. So while this is a good thing, it's not the thing that's going to indicate that we effectively addressed the problem, because we are not increasing the value per story. Let's go to B. Speed of impediment resolution. So would we get to the problems and solve them faster? Well, maybe, because there may be smaller problems. Maybe easier to identify the issue because it's a smaller card. So that's possible. We can hang on to that, but it's not a real great indication that we really solved the initial problem was prolonged tests, because we're still having issues at that point. Okay, let's go see that the stories completed per iteration went up. Okay, that we have more stories completed per iteration. Well, instead of getting one big one, we'd have a bunch of little ones. So that makes sense. The flow through would be better. So that metric I kind of like. So we'd have more flowing through. We'd have a longer backlog. We have more flowing through. Let's keep it. Let's not fall in love, but it makes darn sense. Let's go to the next one. All right, so what do we have now? We want to decrease in the backlog item count. That means how many cards in the backlog. So if we break these rocks, these cards in the backlog down, we start to break them down, and we were to select the things that are highest value, what we would see is a higher backlog count. We'd have more there, all right? So that wouldn't be a decrease in the backlog item count. It would actually be more. So we don't like that. So right off the bat, lots of talking. We squoze. That's a word, right? We squeezed a lot of information out, and we realized that when we do backlog refinement, we are breaking things down, better refining, better understanding, giving more clarity to allow the discussions to happen between our team and our product owner so that they can set themselves up and nail it during the iteration. Now, my team and I'm product owner, and one of the things that we're doing, did this process yesterday. And we broke it down to a certain level that we could work through. So that's cool, right? You got to use or think through these things in real life. And what do we think about cards in general? What are the 3 C's Ron Jeffries talks about? 3 C's. We have, first of all, of every user story is the card. Let's put it on a card, right? So it's visible. We can move it around. We can talk about it. We can wrap it up. We can share it. We can write on it. All those things. Story on the front. Acceptance criteria on the back. Then it's conversation. That's the goal of the card, to have a conversation, right? To walk through and say, hey, this is what I mean by this. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is the value that it gives. And then the team and the dev team and them can talk back and forth and work through it and better understand it so they can better estimate it and they can better accomplish it. That's what's awesome. And then the last C, do you know what it is? So C is confirmation. All right. On the back of the card, through that conversation, you're going to get a confirmation to say, hey, these are the acceptance criteria that we go through. All right. So that's what we're trying to do. Just through one question, we discerned a lot of stuff. We know how to solve the problem. We had focus enough to identify key points. Really, this question is asking this. The team performed intensive backlog refinement. What happens? What metric would be effective? That's really the distillation of this. If you get good at this, when you get good at this, you can look at these questions, and I know that I talk through this ad nauseum to make a point, to hopefully teach you something. But the first time I saw it, it said intensive backlog refinement, what metric? So I can think like when we do backlog refinement, boom, I know these metrics are effective. That's where you got to get. Don't worry, it takes time, but you can do it, okay? So right in there, bang, we nailed that one question. All right, we're going to do this every single week. If you want to work on a call with me and have me listen to you, walk through it to you, I got one starting in like how many minutes? 7 minutes or 5 minutes, right? And so every Wednesday, I go all day long in calls like this where I'm quiet and I just listen to you and the other students talk. That's what's most important. So if you want to get on one of those calls, I'll let you in one. Just come in. Let's see how you're doing. We'll make you better, okay? So we're going to drop out of here. Let's remove that. It is good talking to me. So what is the word of the day? The most important word for you is focus. Stop being a PMP hoarder. Laser focus on what matters. Find your learning style. Give up on frantically searching side to side and actually get better. If you do that, your life will change. Your PMP study life will change and you'll get better. So, adios, muchachos. I'll see you next week.